Okay, so one day late, but that's better than never. So we're going to look at what we did in class for week 7. And in week 7, we looked at the brush tool primarily. And we looked at some of the work you had done the week before. And it was awesome. But what we covered mostly was the brush tool. So we are going to look at a few of the different options you have. So to begin with, and I still recommend this, you create a big blank document and you use a calligraphy brush. So if you don't remember how to get those, to add or append brushes to your brush panel here, but available brushes, you select this little fly out menu here, and there's all of these options here, or different groups of brushes. So you can go ahead and add any of these, and the append or OK. Earlier I just selected append, and so those calligraphy brushes are here and appear in these available brushes. And two of the options we know are the size and the hardness. The hardness is the edges will appear crystal clear, and low hardness they will be feathered or fuzzy. So that was one of the things we looked at. And the first thing we started on here was the brush tip shape. And so some of the controls in that are that you can change the size using the slider. You can hover over the word size and change it by clicking and holding with your mouse. You can change the angle of it by typing numbers into here, or you can change it by sliding over the word angle. And you can change the roundness of the brush. So by default, you know, it's this thin little brush that I can paint with like so, but I can change the roundness so it gets kind of round. And now it's like it started out as this brush, but now it's completely different. So those are a couple of the things that we looked at there. You also can change the angle of the brush. So currently it's this perfectly vertical brush. You can turn it so that it's sideways. And this could help if you were like using the quick mask, trying to get into a really tight area or something. And then we looked at spacing. And spacing is kind of neat, although in this case it doesn't make a hugely cool thing. Some of the options are that if you brush one way and then say brush another way, you can get a kind of a pattern going. But this little north, south, east, west thing allows you to turn the angle of the brush. And the spacing controls how frequently the brush is stroked as you drag your mouse. So those were the brush tip shapes. So if you select Shape Dynamics, you get some jitter controls here, and you get size jitter, which means some strokes are longer than others. And if you combine that, say, with a different angle, you can get a different kind of effect. One of these that we always want to look at is under control here. Some of these things allow us to fade out the brush. Some of them are not available to us, and you'll notice that right over here next to the left of the word control will be a little caution sign with an exclamation point. That's because I don't have a pen with any pressure. So these are reserved for tablets, but I can make it fade. You get the little preview down here so that when I click and hold and drag across, it just automatically fades out. It's fading out to 0, and it's fading out at a distance of 25, I think it's 25 pixels, although I'm not completely sure about that. But if you make this number higher, say like 400, it's going to fade out really, really slowly. 400 is too much to demonstrate in this small amount of space, so maybe 100. There you go. So now it faded out in here. So the size jitter again controls the height, or in this case, the height and length of the stroke. The angle jitter was super cool. Everybody really liked this. This was the tinsel thing. So if you have a lot of jitter in the angle, you get these cool different lines. And then the roundness. So some are going to be rounder than others, and some are going to be thinner than others. So lots of possibilities. And again, I'm doing this with just black, but one of the questions was in class, well, can you do it in a different color? Absolutely. You just change the foreground color, and it's going to change the color of the paint. So we're going to use black here. So that's the shape dynamics. The next one is scattering. So scattering is, in this case, vertical. If you select both axes, it's going to be both horizontal and vertical. And then there's the count, so that there's either a whole lot of them or not as many. And you can jitter that so that there's lots in some places and fewer in others. And again, we have a fade here, so we can fade that out. And those are some of the options in scattering. The texture is going to, for this demonstration, is definitely going to need a different brush. So I'm going to go back and make this brush super round and maybe a little larger. So down here under texture, if the scale's at 100%, it's going to use this size of an item. And if the depth is at 100%, when I click, it will be, and in this case I have multiply, so if we go to darken, some of these modes, these blending modes, are going to interact a little differently with something that's behind it. In this case, there's nothing behind it. But these also can be changed depending on the color that you have in the foreground. So whatever your texture is here, and remember there was this flyout menu that had all of these options available for textures. So that's the one I had trouble with in class, if I remember correctly, so I'm going to turn that off. So the dual brush is the super weird one. The dual brush is you paint with one brush shape, and in this case it's round, it's 173 pixels across, but then you pick a second brush. So I'm going to come down here and pick some other brush. So I'm going to paint with the shape of a circle, but what's in there will be those little squiggly, let me go back to black here, those little squiggly lines. And here, so we're going to probably pick something different. There we go. So I have fade still on this, so it's fading out after a certain amount of time. But you'll notice I won't paint anywhere outside of here. I probably should have gone back here and turned off all these other controls, particularly the fade. So I'm going to turn that off. And the shape dynamics, I'm going to change that size jitter back down to 0 and get my spacing back down to something a little closer. So now I'm going to paint a lot of those. And that was the dual brush. So you could scatter that, but it won't go outside of the edges of the round brush. And then we did color dynamics, which you're going to work with the foreground and background colors. So don't use white as one of them, but use some other colors so you can see something going on. And there's a bunch of different jitters here, and in this case everything is off, so it's all the foreground color. If I add some jitter between the foreground and background, it's going to be kind of half and half of one color or the other, and then you have hue, saturation, and the brightness jitter. And that's what we covered in class, and I gave you some links to some other items in there. One of the other things that we did was we loaded a brush and used that, and we used brusheasy.com. So to do that, if you click on your brush presets here, and you can use this little drop-down menu here, and you can go to Load Brushes, and it's going to look for an ABR file. But to get that ABR file onto your computer, you have to go to brusheasy.com or one of the other links I have in my Digo account there that has brushes. and you go find a cool brush and you download it. And again, this will be browser sensitive, so depending on your browser, that this could change. In this case, I have this ABR file here, and remember we unpackaged it. So I need to copy this to somewhere where I know it is, and I'm just going to go put it on my desktop for right now because I know exactly where that thing is. So I've pasted the ABR file onto my desktop, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to use this drop-down menu to go to Load Brushes, and I'm going to find that ABR file, which is right here, and I'm going to click Load. And now it will append this group of brushes. At the very bottom will be these cool brushes. So now I have all these really neato brushes. So that's how you load a brush. You want to go to Brush Easy, download the brush. You're looking for the ABR file. If it's a zipped folder, you'll need to unzip it or extract the contents of it. And then you're going to load the brush. And then you'll have, at the bottom of the list, will be all these cool brushes that you can use. So that's what we did. Please email me if you have any questions at all. And I'll see you on Wednesday.